Project management is one of the most important disciplines within a digital transformation, but it's also one of the most complex and most rewarding. What exactly does a project manager do? That's what I want to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. And one of the important functions we fill as consultants is the project manager role. And oftentimes we provide project management capabilities to our clients, but the client also provides their own project managers as well. And that collaboration between our two companies is what makes for a very effective project management function. But a lot of times organizations wonder what exactly a project manager does, and a lot of people that are entering the discipline or the field of project management. When clients we work with are looking for a project manager for their digital transformation, or when we're dealing with people that are interested in moving into the field or the discipline of project management, oftentimes they ask, what exactly does a project manager do? And that's exactly what I want to cover in today's video. Now, if you're looking for more best practices around project management and digital transformations in general, I encourage you to read our ebook called Lessons from 1,000 Digital Transformations. It's a book that we published that covers 20 best practices to help make your digital transformation more successful, including from a project management perspective. You can read that ebook by scanning the QR code in front of you, or you can go to the links in the description field below. The first thing that a project manager does is that they focus on project governance. And project governance is something that starts at the very beginning of a project and continues all the way throughout. And generally, a project governance begins with a project charter. A project charter is sort of a manifesto or the guidebook or the playbook to how a project is going to be executed. A project charter will include the parameters for how a project is managed, how decisions are made, different roles and responsibilities on the project, what the goals and objectives of the project are, how the project will be resourced, what the project plan is, all sorts of things related to how the project will be managed, short-term and long-term. So project governance is one of the first things that a project manager really needs to roll up their sleeves and get involved with. And oftentimes they're the ones tasked with developing the project charter along with the rest of the project team. Now, it's important to note that the project charter is not something that's typically developed by the project manager in isolation, but instead the project manager would collaborate with different stakeholders and business owners that are involved in the transformation to ensure that the project charter is representative and focused on where the organization is headed with the project. And once this project charter is developed, it's something that's sort of a living document that's used to manage the project along the way, but it's also updated as things change and as scope changes and as the project itself pivots and moves in different directions based on where the organization is going. So project governance is something that's very important upfront as well as ongoing throughout an entire project. Another responsibility of project managers is management and leadership. And I break this into two categories intentionally because they're two very different but somewhat related categories and skill sets. The management is the more tangible, hands-on management of different activities and resources and tasks throughout a project. It's the act of making sure that we stay on track, that activities are completed on time, that they're completed within a budget, and that they're completed within a certain quality expectation. Leadership, on the other hand, is more focused on some of the intangibles of management and the overall project management function. And I'm actually going to come back to that later in this video. I'm going to talk about the art and the science of project management. But for this purpose, for this segment, I'll talk about leadership in general. And leadership here is focused on making sure that there's alignment between the project itself and the project charter that's been developed, as well as the overall goals and objectives of the company. And more specifically, it's meant to ensure that there's an alignment between the project team and the project resources, as well as the executive leadership of the organization. And this is really important because oftentimes project managers and the project teams that they manage get misaligned and they go off track, not because they don't know what they're doing or because they want to go off track, but because they don't have a clear understanding and alignment with the executive leadership team and the overall direction of the organization. So for that reason, the roles of management and leadership are both equally important to project managers in order to be successful in their transformation initiatives. Another important role of project managers is tracking the overall project budget and the overall project status. So in other words, there's a lot of moving parts within a project. You might have hundreds, if not thousands, of line items and tasks that need to happen throughout a project. And the project management function is a matter of tracking the status of each of those activities, as well as making sure that the project is on budget as well. Project budget and project status are the two things that are most commonly measured and understood by project managers. So I don't want to say this is easy, but it is the thing that's most intuitive to project managers. And it's also intuitive to project teams and the overall organizations to hold their project manager accountable for making sure the project status and project budget is delivered on time. Now, an important thing to note here is as you're managing project budget and project status, it's important to identify potential issues before you've gone over budget or before the status turns to red, if you will, in any individual activity. So in other words, if there's a certain activity that is taking longer than it should, but you haven't yet become delayed officially, or if you're running over budget or you're trending to go over budget, but you haven't actually gone over budget yet, you want to call those issues out and escalate those issues before you've officially gone over budget or gotten behind schedule. So that's one of the tricky parts of being a project manager, but it's something that the effective project managers do, is that they proactively manage project status and project budget throughout the entire project. One of the most overrated functions of project managers is to mitigate risk and to manage risk and to identify the risks in the first place. Every major transformation has risk associated with it. Every major organization struggles with risks. And the effective project managers that we work with are the ones that can proactively anticipate when those risks are going to happen. And just as importantly, they know how to mitigate and overcome those risks. So in other words, rather than waiting until a risk becomes such a big problem that it can't be fixed, effective project managers understand the project well enough to know when the risks are percolating below the surface, and they mitigate and hedge those risks in advance. So risk mitigation, risk management is one of the most important functions of project managers. And if you think about it, it's also really important from a career longevity perspective, because you don't want the risks to surprise anyone. And if risks surprise people outside of you or outside the project team, usually the project manager is the one with a bullseye on them, or the one that's a scapegoat for those risks not being addressed or managed. So one of the most important things you can do to not only make the project successful, but also to be more successful as a project manager throughout your career, is to proactively anticipate, identify, and mitigate risks throughout the project. Now, one thing I've alluded to throughout this video, but it's worth calling out separately as well, is the fact that there is an art and a science to effective project management. In fact, this is something that I dive into in a lot more detail in another video on my YouTube channel. You can find the video right here, and it's called The Art versus Science of Project Management. But to summarize some of those points from that video here, I'll say that when you're managing a project, there's things that are more the science or the tangible aspects of project management. Project status, project budget, those sorts of things. Those are very tangible, hands-on sorts of things that are understandable by a lot of people throughout the organization. So either you do or you don't finish a task on time. Either you are or you aren't over budget. Those are very cut and dry sorts of decisions, and that is the science of project management. But the trickier part of project management is the art of project management. And this is where you look at the gray area between those either or decisions. So for example, if you have a series of tasks that are quote unquote completed, and they were completed on time, the question then becomes, yes, they were completed, but were they completed well? Were they completed with a minimum level of quality to ensure that other activities throughout the project are going to be successful and that there aren't any downstream consequences to having not done those things well? So that is the art of project management. And that's why the science and the training behind the science of project management needs to be augmented with experience from having managed transformations like the one you might be managing now. For example, if you're managing a digital transformation or an ERP software implementation or any other technology initiative, it's important to have a certain level of understanding of technology and how technology initiatives should work, not just from a project management perspective, but from a subject matter expertise perspective, so that you can also engage in the art of project management as well and identify some of the quality issues or some of the things that might need adjusting throughout a digital transformation project. So the art and the science of project management is just as important as some of the other things I've talked about throughout this video. Now, if you're looking for more best practices around project management, specifically as it relates to digital transformation and business transformation in general, I encourage you to read our ebook called Lessons from 1,000 Digital Transformations. It's a book that covers a number of best practices and lessons learned from having helped organizations manage over 1,000 different implementations. And to no surprise, a lot of the lessons in that ebook are related to project management as well as change management and other disciplines within digital transformation. So you can read that book by scanning the QR code in front of you, or you can go to the description field below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. Now, if you're looking for more best practices, but it's also one of the, nope, that's not. Another important role of project manager